Today we're going to try to get at some of the basic aspects and attributes of the management relationship with clients. And it's always different depending on the manager, depending on the client. But before I say much more and start asking questions of them, and I'm going to also say one other thing about housekeeping, we are definitely going to observe the 10 to 15 minutes at the end for Q&A, because if we all just talk the whole time, it will not be as nearly as effective as if we get to hear from you. So there will be an ability for you to ask questions and at the end, or 10, 15 minutes for the wrap of the hour. So we're going to let everybody introduce themselves, going Lenny on our left. Tell us who you are, what you do, and why you're here.
How you doing, everybody? I'm Lenny S. I am in the entertainment music business. I've been in the music business for almost 30 years now. Started in the mid-90s with a company called Rockefeller Records. I've been with them for my whole career, honestly. Started out as a street promotion rep, and then went to an A&R rep, where I worked on like all the albums of the artists that we had, from like Memphis Bleak to Beanie Sigel to Jay-Z. And then from A&R, I transitioned into management. I really fell in love with just, making sure that the artists had the best looks, had the best deals, had the best exposure, et cetera. So the transition from A&R to management was perfect for me. And yeah, I've been doing it about 30 years now. I manage, right? I used to have a lot of clients. As I've evolved, I've kind of like less and less. And right now I have DJ Khaled is who I manage for the most part. I do special projects. Hello? Oh, sorry. Special projects over at Rock Nation as well that we do throughout the company. And yeah, just love music, love the industry, and don't think I could do anything else.
Hey everybody, my name is Mike Kopp. I manage one artist, Ben Folds. My journey to what I'm doing now is a little bit different maybe than some of the others. I spent about 30 plus years in politics. I worked for candidates all over the country, did national campaigns, White House, Capitol Hill, you name it. And I met Ben about 25 years ago. One of his exes and my ex knew each other as friends. And so we connected over politics, and about 15 years ago, he asked me to leave all that and manage him, and I knew nothing about music. But what he recognized that I eventually realized is that there's so much in common, because at the end of the day, it's about finding a tribe, it's about being authentic and true to yourself, and making that connection. And so that's what I've been doing the last 15 years, managing Ben. And we do a lot of different things because of my political background and his interest in politics. We do a lot of arts advocacy on the national level and the local level. We're going to be doing more here in North Carolina. He's recently moved back to North Carolina, which is where he's from, which means that my home in Nashville doesn't get visited very much anymore. I'm now here in North Carolina a lot, which I'm happy for. So I'm just proud to be part of this panel.
My name's Dolphus Ramseur. I'm from the bright lights and big city of Concord, North Carolina. But I live in Davidson. I'm a Wildcat fan, as Bertis here.
Mid-major.
I manage bands. We represent 7 artists, and we have a small independent record label. This is celebrating 25 years. And the biggest artist I work with, they're from Concord, the Avett Brothers. Yeah, as we're just massive lovers of music, and I'm so thankful that I'm involved in this industry. So.
Hi, I'm Stacy Claude. I have been in the music industry for about 17 years in different roles. I started off as a touring artist, and when I was done with that, transitioned into doing some tour logistics, daily management, festival event management, and all sorts of things like that. And in the past 5 years, I've moved to full artist management, big picture stuff. And the 2 artists I work with right now are Steep Canyon Rangers and John Stickley Trio. And sort of my area of expertise is North Carolina-based artists in the bluegrass, Americana genre, sort of mid-level bands.
That's neat. Well, yeah, those are all different paths. Some ways unusual, other ways typical. I guess I should mention I'm Bertis Downs. I don't know if I ever said that, but some of y'all read the programs and all. So I went to college at Davidson, where Dolph lives now, and I still, you know, one thing, the older you get, the more you appreciate your school if you had a good experience there. And I might not have realized it while I was there those 4 years, but I really, you know, it was a great place for me. It really taught me a lot, including my first real exposure to the music business other than growing up as a fan of bands. And I had a radio show at WDAV before it became a corporate classical station. And when it was a college radio station, the kind of thing that used to exist a lot more than it does now. And I worked on the concert committee with John Huey, who was speaking earlier. Y'all saw John, who went on to become an agent. And early days of R.E.M., he booked a lot of R.E.M. shows for his agency. So that's how I kind of got into knowing about music. But then I went to law school and ended up meeting the guys that became a band called R.E.M. and have been working with them ever since. And that was well over 40 years ago. Like Mike, I really only work with one artist. I've helped other people out. I've certainly been supportive and I don't call it consulting, but I've definitely been able to be a little bit involved with other people, but the main people I've worked with have been the four guys in the band R.E.M. that broke up a long time ago. So I guess my first question to the panel, I will warn you, I've given them, these are really hard questions, so I gave it to them ahead of time. And I think they will have some interesting things to say, but will you describe your role with your various artists and the guiding principles you think are essential to being successful as a manager? And I think we'll start the other direction. I'll just pick randomly which way we can start, or y'all can all just jump in. But Stacy, what does it mean to be a manager? When people ask your kids that or whatever, how would they describe what you do? And how would your artists describe what it is you do? What do artists count on when they have a manager in place?
Well, I can tell you my kids would say that I send emails all day, which is not wrong. But I think management can look really different in all sorts of different situations, and one of the most important conversations to have when you're talking to a manager or potential manager is what you're expecting from management and what they are expecting to provide for you, because every deal is a little bit different. But you know, there's small things like the daily logistical stuff. John Huey described it as like the hub of the wheel, which I think is very true. You're the liaison between the record label, the publicist, the tour publicist, the venue, the festival promoter. You're kind of holding all of the things and keeping them together. And then maybe the next day the bus breaks down in Illinois and you have to figure that out and find the warranty for the recent repairs. You know, management just spans so many things. It's impossible to encapsulate everything that you do as a manager.
I've heard it referred to as babysitting. I mean, and that's not at all disparaging to managers or artists or babies, but yeah. It is, there's a certain amount of like, you're there. You're the person who does what needs to be done.
Yeah, and ultimately you want the best for the band. You want them to be in front of the right people, have the best shows they can have the best look, have the best social media. Like, you can't work with someone if you don't fully believe in what they're doing and you want their success, whether you're getting accolades for it or not. It's a lot of behind the scenes, a little bit of everything.
Well said. Dolph?
Yeah, a lot of cheerleading, sometimes some hand holding, and there's a lot of things. You know, I'm a big sports fan, and if you look at a basketball player, sometimes you hear the remark, well, they do things that don't show up in the stats. So we do a lot of things that maybe most people wouldn't really understand or recognize. It's really a lot of just being a friend, confidant. I've got 2 employees here, in the audience, and we worked with an artist. I'm not going to name any names, but the artist won 4 Grammys this past year, and we worked with them for like 5 years. But that artist lost their phone 4 times, lost their ID 4 times, lost their passport, and just trying to help with those situations. It's babysitting. Yeah, babysitting 101, really.
In the 80s, I was in the U2 management office in Dublin. It's still there, principal management. And there was a guy whose entire job was to keep up with the keys. And I think it included insurance and registration and all. But that was in the 80s. That was long before things got really big. Well,
So only 4 times they lost their phone?
yeah.
Okay, well, I can probably top that with Ben.
Oh, man.
Yeah, to Stacy's point, I think it's different because we're all humans and everybody's a little bit different in how they motor through life. Again, because of my path with Ben, we were friends years before he asked me to manage him. And I was, by the way, just a very reluctant person to get into the industry. It wasn't my path. And we just happened to hit at the right time where I was maybe looking for something different for the last phase of my life. And he had gotten tired of being with management, and not despairing anybody that worked with him, but he was tired of sort of going in the same direction that everybody wanted him to go in. And he had dreams and hopes. He wanted to write a book. He wanted to work in musicals. He wanted to do more orchestral stuff and composing and stuff that just didn't fit in the box that people had him in. And I'm the guy that was just sitting there going, hey, you should do whatever you want to do. And one thing led to another, and now I'm helping him do whatever he wants to do. So it is a lot of hand-holding, to their point. And I don't know if it's any more or less because of my relationship with Ben, but I mean, we joke about how we've probably been married to each other longer than we've been married to anyone else. And so along with that comes, I'm involved in every aspect of his life, and he is involved in every aspect of my life. And so you start with that as a base, and then and that means that it's early morning calls, late night issues, stuff happening, family, whatever, business. And I also, from my standpoint, I had to learn very quickly the vernacular of the music industry. To this day, even 15 years later, Ben loves to refer to me to his friends as his manager who knows nothing about music. And I have to remind him, like, I've learned a few things along the way, so give me a little credit. But it is about learning vernacular, and it is about learning the basics of the industry and how it works and keeping up with the trends. But at the end of the day, I would, at least in my situation, it's just about following a path, and whatever the artist is interested in doing, if they're interested in it, they're likely going to be more passionate. If they're more passionate, you're going to get greater creativity, and with that will come everything else. So that's kind of the way I motor through it.
Yeah, those are all great. And if you notice how everybody said they're sort of like family with their clients. I really think you have to have a lot of patience, and your clients end up becoming family. I think that's how the good management, client relations work. There's, like I said, a lot of late hours. The hours are unpredictable. I've missed, Christmases, Thanksgivings. I've missed real holidays, kids' birthdays, because, it's a 24-hour job that you have to stay committed to. So by nature, I have to be family with the person I'm working with, or it won't work. I can't do it sort of like with these like boundaries of like, this is a professional relationship. Management is deeper than just a normal relationship. Like I said, it's like a marriage almost. And even me with managing Khaled, I'm not only managing Khaled. Yes, it's just him, but I deal with his wife Nicole. I deal with the kids. I deal with the nanny. I deal with everybody in the sense of you kind of take on the whole family. And I think it's about creating opportunities. I think it's about, there's 2 managers, I believe. There's the manager who sits around and waits for everything to come in, and some people are lucky enough to have really successful clients who get a lot of phone calls with offers. And then I think there's the management or the manager who sorts out the opportunities, who sits there with his or her client and kind of like goes through ideas, goes through goals. What do we want to do this year? Do we want to do television? Do we want to do branding? Do we want to do partnerships? Seek out, you know, what you're interested in, what you're comfortable with, and then reach out to those brands or companies or movie studios or whatever the case may be. And that's the kind of manager I like to be. I like to sort out and conquer new, you know, new ventures that we haven't done last year. And every year we go through new goals and what's our 3 to 5 year plan or 10, whatever you want. But it's really creating those opportunities and making sure that, you know, they have constant income coming in. You have to create opportunities for them to make money, you know, and not just for now and not for next month, but for a lifetime, you know. So it's a real dedication, and you have to be, you know, really passionate and love what you do to do this job.
Every one of y'all said things that I'd like to give a speech on, but I'm not. But just flashing off a couple things that you've each said. I think Stacy said something along the lines of, you're there for them. I mean, all of you have said that at some point. Your life, at least depending on how many people you're working with, a seventh of Dolphus's life is dedicated to each of these different bands he represents or artists that he represents. You take care of whatever, and in my role, I think some artists probably want a manager who's super involved in the creative process. I mean, John Landau helps Bruce Springsteen with his music and with his politics. And you know, it's an all-encompassing relationship between those two guys. First of all, it's Bruce, not a full band, although the band comes out on tour. And I'm sure a lot of 14, 15-year-old up-and-coming people want the manager more involved in their creative decisions. I learned very early on, that's not my role. I mean, we actually, in Memphis one day, they were recording about their 5th album, and I realized if I start expressing a lot of enthusiasm for that song, they're going to take it off the record. And so I became like what's called a counter-indicator, a contra-indicator. Like, shut up about it. If you like the song, hope it stays on the record. But don't. They didn't want to just do the same record every time. And I tended to go to the songs that sounded like R.E.M. So I just learned that's not my role. That's not what I should be doing. I need to make their music translate to the world the way, the most optimal way possible. And we all made mistakes. I mean, we didn't do it exactly right every time. There are things that you could easily say a change would have been better. But for the long term, it was a sustainable career. The other thing I'll say is that technology has changed this world so much. Y'all are so lucky because you don't have, I'm saying y'all because I think of all of you as really young, and compared to me, you are. But those of you that are really young, you have no rear view mirror. You don't know how it used to be in the olden days when if people wanted to hear your music, they had to pay somebody some money for a piece of plastic, and then some of that money theoretically filtered back through to your artist. Pretty simple world. It was almost like the Flintstones. It was really, really primitive. And nowadays, the monetization, the revenue streams, all that stuff, there's way more of them, and they mean a lot less, and you hope they somehow add up to some real money to sustain a career. We started in '80. The internet didn't really come along and start affecting anything to the late '90s. And then streaming didn't come along for another 12, 15 years after that, to the point where now streaming is real revenue. I mean, it's like the main revenue. And that was just not the case. So let's move on to the second question, which is not all that different, but what are the, I'll start with you, Mike, and we can go to Lenny and then Dolphus and then Stacy. What are some traits you associate with your own success in terms of how you've approached management, and then also other people that you've kind of admired over the years, whether, you know, maybe they're mentors, maybe they're other people who've been successful at it, who you think have a particularly good way of approaching this career of management. What are some of the kind of traits and attributes you think are key?
Yeah, well, I think, I guess, you know, Ben and I have managed to have a sustainable career for him. Everybody measures success in different ways. It's put food on our tables for many years, and he continues to be able to go and sell out rooms, and so that's all good. And he's able to continue to create new stuff. I think the thing that I would, and I want to pick up on something you said, Bertis, a minute ago. And it's the thing I didn't realize, transition from politics into music, but it does. If in my case, I don't put words in Ben's mouth. I don't put music, I don't try to influence his music, and I don't try to influence his creativity. That's his. And that's what I tried to do in the 300 or so campaigns I worked in over 30 years. And you all know this if you follow politics at all. You can tell when a politician is saying something that's not from them, that's not from their heart. It's just a consultant has told them to say this because polling says this is what people want to hear. Same thing happens, I think, in music. And so I've always tried to avoid that. Authenticity is what makes success in music and as a creative. And I think I don't, when I talk to young artists or others who might ask my opinion about it, and I'll give a quick story. I was having breakfast the other day in Nashville, and this young server finally, for whatever reason, got up the courage to talk to me because she knew I was doing management. And she said she was wanting to do gigs, and she was approaching venues about getting gigs, and she was told time and again, we don't want to hear your music, you need to play this or that. And she's like, I guess I just have to do that. And I said, no, run. I mean, why would you cover someone else's art? Why would you pretend that it's your art? If you have your own art, and even if you're just playing in a room of 2 people or family or whatever, it's your art. So I think being authentic and never losing that is the key to success. And again, success may be, maybe you don't make millions, maybe you don't, whatever. But if you're, at the end of the day, if you feel like you have put forth your art and you're proud of it, that's success. So that's how I would look at it. And as far as who I would look to, boy, that's a tough one because, I mean, I'm listening to you guys. I admire all the things that you guys have done with the artists that you've worked with. So for me, I guess what I'll say is I'm still a sponge. I'm 66 years old, and I've been doing this for 15 years, and I still feel like a kid in kindergarten learning, my ABCs. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to keep learning from everybody else, and I think that's what everybody in this room needs to do.
Yeah, he said it right. Number one is authenticity is one of the traits you have to go by. If it's not authentic, if it's not real, the people will smell it out, sniff it out, and it won't go over. It won't sell. It won't relay, to everyone else. Being dependable, being reliable. I mean, you're in charge of like this artist or whatever. I'll just say talent or career. You know what I mean? And it's a lot. It's a lot of responsibility, and they have to trust you. And I think that's where I've gotten, my success from, or our success from, is being there. Like I said, 24 hours, being reliable, being dependable, being passionate, executing, and doing any and everything it takes. I worked with a lot of people along the years that never took no for an answer, never settled. Artists will come at the last minute and say, oh, I need 8,000 balloons, but like the store only has 4,000. Like, you have to figure it out. And it's a silly thing, but it happens every day with with touring and concerts and pop-ups or whatever the case may be. And you have to be able to deliver. So execution is very, very big, and I'm big on carrying out anything that we have planned or that we set a goal on.
That's the key. Figuring it out. Problem solving.
Any mentors for you?
I'm sorry, yeah, you're right. Honestly, the person I work with Jay-Z for 30 years. He's my idol, he's my brother, he's my mentor, he's everything. I saw this vision, not as big or as much as this. I didn't think it would be this big, but I did see something in the early 90s, and I sought out the company. I sought out Rockefeller Records. I sought out working with Jay-Z, begged to be an intern, got a chance, and never turned back. So, I follow my instinct, I follow my gut, and that was, again, from passion, from listening to him, from seeing him, and just kind of like having a sort of little bit of an instinct of what I think is going to be pretty big, and I'm glad I
That's really neat. It's really
for
neat.
it.
I guess one quality maybe. I'm a former tennis pro, and when I was not good enough to kind of make it, I taught at country clubs, and I was actually the tennis director for the city of Winston-Salem as well. And one thing that I think has helped, that I've I've used into the music is when I would have a student come to me, I could see the potential in the student. You know, I'm looking at what they might be 3 or 4 years down the road if they put a lot of hard work in. And I kind of have used that with music as well. Like, I've managed the Avetts for 23 years, and when I first saw them over at UNCC at the Wine Vault, they would sing off key, play out of tune, but the heart of it was there, and you could tell they could connect with people. So I knew they would get better as musicians. They already had the songwriting ability then. So that's been very key to sort of see when you sign somebody, what they maybe can be. As far as mentors, this is maybe a little bit of an oddball one, but I grew up in Concord, and I didn't work with these folks, but they were cast such a big shadow. One just passed away a couple weeks ago. His name was Humpy Wheeler. And Humpy was the president or the vice president over at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Humpy was one of the world's greatest, if not greatest, promoters to ever live. And if you ever went to one of his races, the World 600 or the fall race, it was a spectacle. And there was nothing beneath Humpy to get people out to his event. Another one, which is another odd one, is the Crockett family that was based here. And they had Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, which is in this area was known as the NWA. So you had Ric Flair and you had Dusty Rhodes, and they would promote shows like nobody's business. And I learned so much just from being a fan. So Rick Rubin's produced 6 albums by the brothers. And if I'm in a studio with Rick, we will talk pro wrestling until people get sick of us. And Rick, and I believe this, Rick feels that if you're a fan of pro wrestling and you get into the music business, you've got a leg up on most people. So anyway.
I think some qualities are definitely, you need to be detail oriented. There's always so many balls in the air, and being able to keep track of all of the things that are going on and not letting, especially really important things, slip through the cracks. And definitely echo what Lenny said about just figuring things out. You have to be open to expanding your skill set and your knowledge. Like, you know, I've learned more about tour buses than I ever wanted to know. Things will happen like, oh, hey, we have this signed guitar. We want to auction it off on the stage in an hour. Can you set up an online auction? Like, oh, okay, I don't know how to do that, but I'm going to figure it out, and we're going to have the QR code. You know, just you have to be willing to grow and change. And with the changing of the music industry, even in, you know, the 17 years I've been involved in the music industry, it looks totally different than it did when I started. And if you are not willing to grow and change and learn new skills, it's going to be a lot harder. As far as mentors, I think of Carrie Estrin, who managed Tony Rice for years, and Denise Stiff, who managed Alison Krauss and Gillian Welch for a time. These are women that are a bit older than me that really were the first female managers that I became aware of, and especially Denise has been an amazing mentor and support of me over the years, and I look up to both of them for sure.
You brought up something, Stacy, about balls in the air, not dropping any of them, keeping everything going. People sometimes need to be reminded of things for a 4th time, and just keeping up with communication, basics.
My motto is being politely persistent.
Yeah, it's a good way. It's a good way of putting it. That's to me, you know, whether you're I started as a lawyer, ended up being a manager, a lot of the same skills, but just basic correspondence. And then I think also being honest with your artist when they ask. So, you know, if in my case, the artist, like I said, I was never involved in the creative process. Nobody needed my opinion. But if they asked, I'd give them my opinion. And on other things, I would certainly give my opinion because let's really think this through. They're the board of directors. I'm helping them go, make it happen in an executive capacity. But the honesty and real facts orientation really matters. We're getting pretty close to our witching hour, but I had a little thing that I'm going to ask. I was going to have all of you what questions you have for each other, but I don't know if we'll get through my questions for you guys. And the two in particular I want to single out are Stacy and Mike. Mike, I want to know, just because of things you've said, tell us about Kennedy Center. And Stacy, tell us about Steve Martin, to the extent y'all feel like talking about that stuff.
I'll just do it real quick. So Ben Folds has two parts of his brain. One is he does music, rock music and such. The other is symphonic music, and he's become a composer and so forth. We ended up getting him a gig where he was artistic director, the first artistic director to the National Symphony Orchestra at the Kennedy Center 8 years ago. Basically, it turned the Kennedy Center into his playground. We were able to curate shows throughout the year where he was bringing contemporary artists of all genres of music to the orchestra, introducing, merging them together seamlessly. And it was great. Selling out shows. The mission was to get young people to come in and listen to the symphony. And it worked until there was a takeover by our current president of the Kennedy Center. And when that happened, as soon as we got the word that he was going to take it over is when Ben made the decision to step away. He did a very simple post which just said, I'm out. And not by choice, but he became sort of a symbol of resistance in the symphonic world to what has been happening. And rather than run from it, one of the things that I've loved about Ben, and it comes from my political background, is he says this time and again, if artists don't speak up now, you won't get the chance, because there's a very real possibility that gift will be taken from you. Yeah. And so we make it a point. He does symphony shows, he goes around the country, he does town halls, he's constantly preaching freedom of expression, don't run from it. And so, that's the Kennedy Center story.
Good for him. And I just noticed it I clicked on the story and read about it, and when I saw, I had to ask you that. And it probably didn't hurt to have somebody with your background that he could back this stuff around with.
It kind of came in handy. And just one last thing,
cool.
We actually, to add insult to injury, we made sure that we captured 2 performances that he did in October before the election, and we secretly, without permission from anybody at the Kennedy Center, released those recordings as a live album with the orchestra. And again, we're pushing it, and I'm just saying that if you go on Spotify and listen to
So just
Ben
on
Folds,
streaming, or just
no, everything.
You put out vinyl and CD and everything?
Yeah, we did, and we did it with help from the handful of people who are so courageous, who still work there, who helped us get rights and permission without anybody higher up knowing what we were doing. And we released it in D.C. at a record store on July 4th, Independence Day. Got tons of press, to the point where people in the White House were actually publicly criticizing us for playing games and such. Anyway, all that to say, it's been quite a road. And the last thing I'll say about the Kennedy Center stuff, in order to get that through the Kennedy Center, you'll find this funny, we had to use Signal. All the communications with Kennedy Center staff and me and a label that we found in London who was courageous enough to put it out for us was all done through Signal, so that it couldn't be tracked.
And the Pentagon.
Exactly.
I'll sharpen up my question to Stacy, and then it's going to be time for y'all to ask questions. So does somebody send him a microphone? Or?
We're ready to go, my man.
All right, I want to ask Stacy more about, so when I was a kid, I used to go with John Huey down to the Great Southeast Music Hall in Atlanta, and we would see the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band and their opening act, Steve Martin, who was a banjo player. And he was a pretty big comedian at the time. I think it actually may have been they were opening for him at that point. But he would always come back on and play banjo with this serious country, Americana, traditional roots band, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. And now, as I understand it, he's an occasional member of Steep Canyon Rangers. Am I right? How do y'all handle, like, do people come to the shows disappointed if Steve's not going to be with them? Because he's,
Sometimes.
I mean, how does that work in terms of you have a band that's been going a long time, all of a sudden you're graced with the presence of a Steve Martin in the culture who plays with them some of the time. How do you just kind of handle that? How
Well,
does it work?
it's interesting because I wish I could take credit for that relationship, but I can't. He has a home in Brevard, and the band met. And when Steve Martin wanted to put out his first album, he was like, "Well, the only band I know is Steep Canyon Rangers," and so they have this amazing relationship now going on 15 years. And for a time, Steve would show up randomly at shows
So
fairly
it is
often.
fairly random. It's not like tours and stuff. It's-
Sometimes we would have it planned, but not announced.
Is that ever billed?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
but not always.
Yeah.
But he really doesn't do that anymore. It's been a few years since he.
Yeah.
But now the Rangers play many dates a year with Steve Martin and Martin Short, and they are the musical act of the show. And they play some with Steve, and he is a super talented banjo player and a really funny songwriter, as you can imagine. And it's been a wonderful relationship for the band. It's put them in front of way more people than they would have been otherwise. It's introduced bluegrass music to an audience that maybe had never heard of it, and it's been great. They're so good to us, to the band. They're fantastic.
So I'm going to turn it over to the audience, but I'm first going to make sure, since we're talking about bluegrass and traditional music, and Steve is married to an alum of Davidson College. Yep. And Ann, I guess Martin, I don't know what her last name is, but her first name is Ann, and she's in publishing. There's a great band of about between the ages of like 19 and 23 of young women called Wilder Flower, and they're from Davidson, and they're really good, and they're like getting around, except they have a slight problem, which is their violin player just won a Rhodes Scholarship, so she's over in Oxford, England for a year, kind of absent with leave. But they're a force. They're on Spotify. I'm sure a lot of y'all have heard of them, and I'm a big fan. Okay, who wants to ask a question?
So you all talked about being cheerleaders and supportive and staying out of artistic decisions unless you're asked. If you see one of your artists making a decision that you think is going to be a train wreck, and you really believe this is a moment to go to the mat, how do you handle that?
Like I said, I manage DJ Khaled, and his weight fluctuates, and we had just gotten him a deal with Weight Watchers, and it was his partnership to show his journey and trying to lose weight. Great, amazing. About a week or two later, a deal came in from Pizza Hut for like it was like $2 million. It was like great. It was really good, but obviously. But as a manager, I have to show him. I know I'm going to advise against it, but I can't not show him. So I show it to him. I'm like, hey, this came in, but we're not going to do it. He's like, what? What do you mean? It's $2 million. Like, I'm like, Khaled, we just signed with Weight Watchers. We can't sign. So I'm very honest. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I can only give my best advice. We didn't do it, thank God, but that would have been a train wreck, a disaster.
Yeah, I find you got to be honest with them and tell them the truth, or it's going to bite both of you in the ass if not.
I tell my husband often that a big part of my job is like acting therapist with no credentials, and you just have to have a lot of hard conversations sometimes, and learning how to approach things like that in a non-confrontational, like open dialogue way. I've learned a lot over the past several years, because sometimes you just have to tell it like it is.
Yeah, and I think the trick for Ben is not to tell him to do something, it's to make it where it's his decision.
Right.
Because if I told him to do something, he has a contrary nature, so he'll do the other opposite.
It's a little like parenting in that sense. Yeah. Well, it's really different dynamic, too, between a solo artist and a band. I manage the Four-Headed Monster. And the key in a management situation is getting them to communicate, to reach consensus. They worked by consensus. They only did stuff they all agreed on. It didn't always happen right away. It wasn't a pop quiz. But unless they agreed on it, they didn't do it. And so my philosophy became, from the very early days, it's their band. Once they've decided something, it may be a train wreck. If they're insisting on a first single, then maybe that's the wrong first single. But over time, it works itself out. And to come in and try to stop the train, it probably wouldn't have worked. It's their band. But that was unique to this fact that it was not just one person to have a heart-to-heart with. You're having to try to wrangle a heart-to-heart with 4 people, all in the same room, which gets harder and harder in these technical times. So every relationship is different, and I will correct one thing in your question. Some managers do get involved in their artistic, creative decisions of the band. It depends on what the band needs or wants, and some are more involved than others, and so. Other questions?
Thank you all for coming today, but as an artist manager who's been managing for about 3 years with former A&R experience, how do you know which artist to pick? Is it more of an intuition, or is it like a 3-strike system and you're out? And as a secondary question to that, how do you know when to let go of that artist if they're not being serious or fulfilling into what they want?
Yeah, for me, it's intuition. It's a feeling. I believe as an artist, people have to want to maybe sort of want to be you or believe you. Like, that story has to be believable. I've worked with artists that, you know, you can't really, there's no history in their story. There's nothing that people can kind of hold on to or grasp onto to believe in you. You know what I mean? People want to know about your journey and how you got there. So that's one. And then the second part is I've walked away from situations where they didn't want to evolve or they didn't want to get out of the, like, place that they were at, and I constantly have to keep evolving and progressing, and in order to be successful for me and to just kind of keep going and moving up, you gotta want to evolve and be better than you were last year or the last decade. So if you're willing to be like too content and too relaxed, and which is cool, some people just want a certain, I want more, so I usually walk away from the situation.
I think given the fact that the way I work with as a manager, I'm so involved in every aspect of the person's life, I couldn't, it's like a relationship. If you don't feel like you can completely be a part of that person's life and be comfortable in that situation, it's not for you. I mean, you may walk away from some amazing opportunities, but at the end of the day, you essentially have to live with this person, either physically live with them or in your head constantly. And as far as walking away, it's the same thing as like a relationship. If it ain't working, it ain't working. And it's better to be honest up front about it.
Anybody else? If not, we've got time for 1 or 2 more quick ones back here.
So kind of to piggyback, or I guess on the flip side of what she had asked. Well, first of all, my name is Daniel. I am an audio engineer and producer here in Charlotte and the owner and operator of Safe Zone Studios. So she mentioned how you guys determine when to get rid of an artist if they're doing something crazy. I wanted to know, how would you guys kind of decide for an up-and-coming artist, like what could they do to kind of get your guys' attention, and like how could they contact you? Because one of the main things that all of you guys have mentioned on this panel is the relationship that you guys have with your artists, and it's like a family, and it's really deeply rooted in you being involved. So with somebody that's just up and coming and they're trying to get your attention, figure it out, like how do they foster that relationship and build that with you?
I would maybe say, if an artist is out doing their thing, word will start to spread. Blood will get in the water, and the sharks will start circling. Yeah, word of mouth typically leads us to people a lot of times. It's not the cold calling as much. I would rather see more action than people hounding us that we need to come check them out. Anyway, that's just sort of how we're maybe a little different. I don't know. It's just maybe it's that way with everybody. I'm not sure.
I think I'm pretty responsive if someone reaches out and is like, hey, would you be interested in a 15-minute phone call? Or would you be willing to set up a Zoom? Or something like that, as opposed to exactly what Dolph just said, like, here's why I'm amazing and why you need to, know me. It's more of like, hey, let's open this conversation and see if we even click on any sort of level. Yeah, I want to be part of someone's team. I want to get behind somebody and be excited. I don't want to be anybody's mom or nagging work wife or anything like that. So if someone comes to me with like, hey, this is what I'm doing, I feel like I'm ready for a team to help me do all of these other things. That's what gets me excited, not the typical pitch of check me out.
And also, management is sort of like, it's like dating. Like, you have to court the person. So if I meet an artist, or if I'm interested in them, or if I hear about them, I'm gonna go to their city. I'm gonna, you know, I want them to kind of take me around. I want to go to a show that they already have set up, maybe elsewhere, so that I can see, you know, how that show goes. An artist can tell you anything. An artist can be like, I'm the next biggest thing. I'm the next Lady Gaga, whatever. They can tell you anything. We want to hear it from other people. We want to hear it from the people that follow you online, from the people at your show, from the people that you've, you know, made a difference with as far as them listening to your music. So, and you have to date them. You have to go out. You have to go to lunches and dinners and hang out and get to know them. Because, like I said earlier, it's a personal sort of thing. For me, it's not just like business. So I have to know that we're going to get along and we have things in common and we have common interests. And I could even help you. I may not even be able to help where you're trying to go. So maybe I may have to move away from the situation if I can't give you what you need after learning about what you're trying to do.
Thank you all for your time. Nastasia Mims, I'm an interdisciplinary artist, meaning I wear many hats in many lanes as a creative. And I'm here as a national recording artist, so I do have music that's out. Question for you is, if you, or how do you, work with artists who are involved in several lanes, several industries, and how that can be cross-functional? If that's something that you do, like, how do you do that?
I don't mind trying that. I mean, again, I work with one artist, but, you know, he's got the attention span that much, and we have, I'm not kidding you, we probably have 20 different lanes going at one time. And I thrive on that because I too have that much brain bandwidth. And so it works for us. I mean, I don't mind the additional lanes. I think it's important for a manager or anybody who's helping to make sure that that the lanes don't divert too much where they are hurting each other or taking away energy. So I think while Ben may have a lot of open lanes, what I try to do is make sure that they connect. And if they don't, I might suggest that we not take that lane right now and hold it until later. So it's all about getting involved in the artist and making sure you understand what their goals are, and just trying to manage the traffic flow as much as possible.
Well, it's 3 o'clock. We're out of here, but I have one final 2 words for you that I think sums up a lot of what this panel did, of what a good manager does for artists. Positive energy. You got to be the one with some positive energy. And there are going to be a lot of times in a career that's needed. And that often can and should come from the manager. I want to thank the panel and all of you. It was a very nice discussion.